Chapter 29, Drowsy and restless, the boy stood before Lin Yinyin, wearing a bright, cheerful smile. Sitting silently nearby, Yingxing clenched his fists. He didn't know how to threaten people. He didn't know how to fight. At that moment, he even started to doubt himself. What exactly did Lin Yinyin like about him? The more he thought about it, the more insecure he became. He overheard the boy say, "Lin Yinyin, could I have your contact information? There are so many questions I can't solve. I was hoping to ask for your guidance after class." The boy spoke fluently, even with a pleasant voice. Yingxing didn't dare imagine how Lin Yinyin would respond. Right then and there, he made up his mind. He was going to change, slowly, step by step. He didn't want to be a stammering boy any longer. Not for a future job, not for anyone else. Just for her, Lin Yinyin. Sweet words, affectionate confessions, he could say those too. In the end, Lin Yinyin didn't give the boy her contact info. She politely turned him down. When the class bell rang, the boy left Yingxing's desk reluctantly. Yingxing returned to his own seat, head down and silent. But his fingers couldn't help but brush lightly against the edge of Lin Yinyin's sleeve. She noticed the movement and turned to him. He pulled out a blank sheet of paper and scribbled with swift strokes. When he was done, he passed it to her. "Yinyin, can you not pay attention to other boys? I promise I'll work hard to speak clearly, to say complete sentences just for you. That boy doesn't have good intentions, he's trying to flirt with you." It was the first time Yingxing expressed his feelings so directly. Lin Yinyin turned toward him, her gaze shimmering like starlight, making Yingxing feel completely lost in her eyes. She leaned in and whispered gently into his ear, "Yingxing, I promise, I won't pay attention to anyone else. Only you." No matter how much he tried, Yingxing couldn't change his shy nature. Whenever he blushed, Lin Yinyin would always poke his cheek with her finger. It had become a habit. From that day on, Lin Yinyin never helped her classmates with homework again. When someone approached her for tutoring, she would smile and politely decline, often adding, "Sorry, see the person next to me? He doesn't like it when I tutor others. So I really can't. I hope you understand." After hearing that, most students would chuckle awkwardly and reply, "Oops, sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt your relationship." As senior year began, PE classes were nearly non-existent. Getting even one activity period a week felt like a rare luxury. But pop quizzes? They came one after another. Sometimes right in the middle of a lesson, the teacher would say, "Let's stop here, time for a quick test." At first, Lin Yinyin found it exciting. But as it happened more and more, even she started to feel tired and bored. She even struggled to stay awake during evening self-study. That night, the test scores from the morning's two classes were handed back. Lin Yinyin's score wasn't terrible, but it didn't meet the teacher's expectations. She had been sleepy during the test, careless on some questions, and made avoidable mistakes. And so, during evening study, she was publicly called out by the physics teacher. When her name was mentioned, she was nodding off, and it wasn't until Yingxing tugged at her sleeve that she realized she was being addressed and quickly stood up. Chapter 30, Hard to Please, Mr. Tang, the physics teacher, spoke gently. That was exactly why Lin Yinyin kept dozing off. His soft, soothing voice sounded more like a lullaby than a lecture. Even as she stood up, she couldn't help nodding a few more times. "Mr. Tang," she said, blinking. His voice, warm as spring breeze, drifted right into her ears. "Lin Yinyin, are you just too tired from studying today? I saw you nodding off a few times. Or, is it my class that's putting you to sleep?" Mr. Tang wasn't just gentle in tone, his whole demeanor was soft-spoken and kind. Her classmates often said he must have grown up in the tranquil south of China. Listening to him scold her felt more like being sweetly coaxed than reprimanded. Lin Yinyin felt guilty, like she'd committed some terrible sin. She admitted her mistake honestly. "I'm sorry, Mr. Tang. It's your voice. It's just too gentle. I got carried away listening and got sleepy. I promise it won't happen again. Also, Mr. Tang, do you have a girlfriend?" She wasn't the only one curious about that question. In fact, the entire class, and probably the whole senior grade, was curious about Mr. Tang's love life. He wasn't just soft-spoken. He was attractive too, and he wasn't that much older than them. At their age, boys and girls alike were full of budding feelings. Mr. Tang had become the object of many crushes, some subtle, others quite obvious. There were even bold boys who brought him flowers. Every time, Mr. Tang would gently turn them down, saying studies were more important. But today, Lin Yinyin had voiced the very question that had been on so many minds. Mr. Tang opened his mouth, ready to speak. But Lin Yinyin added with a mischievous grin, "You're not allowed to dodge the question. Otherwise, I'm afraid the boys in class won't be able to concentrate anymore. Please just give them an answer. They need closure before graduation." The classroom burst into laughter and teasing. Mr. Tang rarely got angry, so the students often joked around with him during lessons. As stressed as they were in senior year, teachers usually turned a blind eye to harmless fun, as long as it didn't interfere with studies. In senior year, students ruled. Mr. Tang gave a shy smile. After a moment, he said softly, "No, I don't have one." Silence, then cheers. His cheeks turned red. "Focus on your revision. Get into a good university. There are plenty of lovely girls out there." A brave boy called out, "But I want you, Mr. Tang." Another shouted, "Wait for me, for years. I'll marry you." There were many bold confessions, but only Mr. Tang blushed. That little episode ended with laughter. After evening study, Lin Yinyin was called to the office. Lin Yinyin. The cheerful look on her face instantly disappeared. "Yes, sir." Mr. Tang said, "Right now, your top priority should be your studies. Do you understand?" "I do, Mr. Tang." "I shouldn't have fallen asleep," she replied, sincerely. He sighed gently. "I haven't been teaching here long, so I don't know all my students yet. But tonight, I've learned something new about you. You have a special kind of influence. I hope you can use that to lead your classmates forward." Lin Yinyin smiled and replied, "Mr. Tang, do you know Yingxing?" He nodded. "Your desk mate? Top of the grade?" Her eyes curved with affection, as if thinking of someone precious. "He's not just my desk mate. He's my little housekeeper. My boyfriend. If I start leading study groups, I'm afraid afraid he'll get jealous. And trust me, he's not easy to cheer up. Chapter 31, Homework Help, Mr. Tang. That was a mouthful of dog food, served fresh. She had seen students date before, but never had she seen one so boldly flaunt their relationship right in front of a teacher. Lin Yinyin continued cheerfully, but, Mr. Tang, you could try talking to him. Maybe discuss it a little. Though honestly, I doubt he'll agree. And even if he does, he'll probably be unhappy, but he won't show it. He'll just quietly sulk for everyone's sake. So, could you maybe give me some advice on how to cheer him up? Mr. Tang, what? Before she could speak, Lin Yinyin added quickly, don't worry, Mr. Tang. I'm just joking. Really? But I do think maybe Yingxing and I could tutor the class together. I'm sure he'd be happy to help. Mr. Tang patted her chest in mock relief. Really? Of course. She had to admit, she'd been startled just a moment ago. Now composed again, Mr. Tang said, all right then. From now on, the first period of evening self-study will be your tutoring session with Yingxing. I'll also talk to your homeroom teacher. Unless anything unexpected comes up, we'll start tomorrow. Lin Yinyin nodded. Yingxing's waiting outside. Should I call him in so we can discuss it together? Mr. Tang, sure. She couldn't help but wonder, were they already living together? To be young again. In the end, Yingxing agreed to the arrangement, much more readily than Lin Yinyin had expected. Whatever he was thinking, she couldn't guess. After politely saying goodbye to Mr. Tang, the two of them left the office and headed home together. Who could resist a kind-hearted girl? Truthfully, Lin Yinyin had only been joking at first, but the idea of helping classmates and working hard together felt like something she ought to do. Especially since Mr. Tang was so dedicated, shouldn't she do her part as well? Even if her efforts were small, she wanted to give them wholeheartedly. And truth be told, not everything she'd said was a joke. She genuinely wanted to tutor the class with Yingxing, because she thought it might help him grow. It might even help him overcome his stutter. Though Lin Yinyin actually found his stammer rather endearing, she knew it might affect his future, his studies, his work, his confidence. But whether he was a stammerer or not, she would love him just the same. When Yingxing heard the suggestion, his first thought was that it might help him improve his speaking. If he could speak more smoothly, maybe Lin Yinyin would like him even more. He dreamed of one day speaking full sentences, maybe even whispering sweet nothings into her ear every day, making her laugh. And besides, helping classmates? He was more than willing. They were all striving together to get into good universities. Though he couldn't help much before, this was his chance to offer something, however small. The entire class liked Lin Yinyin, and thanks to her, even the normally quiet Yingxing had become well-liked too. So when news spread that the two of them would be helping during evening study, the class was thrilled. Cheers filled the room. Senior year had arrived. Everyone was chasing improvement. And what could be better than learning directly from the top students? The tutoring session lasted 1 hour. When it ended, everyone was reluctant to stop. Lin Yinyin and Yingxing had a unique way of solving problems, simple, clear, and even fun. Most students only needed to see their method once to remember it. Chapter 32, the 100-day pledge. From that day on, the whole class looked forward to the evening study period, when Lin Yinyin and Yingxing would help them with homework. Everyone paid close attention. The results showed in their quizzes. Mr. Tang nodded with satisfaction. He hadn't been wrong about her. Lin Yinyin truly had the ability to lead others forward. And so, the days passed in steady study and quiet effort, until at last, the 100-day pledge assembly arrived. Almost every high school holds this kind of event, for seniors preparing for college entrance exams, or middle school students facing high school entrance exams. Its goal is simple, to inspire and encourage, and to give students a moment of relief in the midst of pressure. Each year, the school selects several top-performing students to deliver speeches. This year was no different. Among the chosen speakers were none other than Lin Yinyin and Yingxing. As the undisputed top student, Yingxing's speech was expected. Lin Yinyin, however, was a true underdog. Once ranked near the bottom of the grade, she had soared into the top 5. Her rise had made her a symbol of hope for struggling students, a legend in her own right. The school had prepared most of the speeches, basic study tips, motivational lines, that sort of thing. The day before the assembly, both Lin Yinyin and Yingxing were summoned to the office. Their homeroom teacher, seeing them holding hands, tactfully looked away and spoke earnestly, "You two make me so proud. This year, both speaking slots are from our class. Please make the most of this opportunity. Here are the speech drafts, look them over and memorize them if you can. I'll be in the audience tomorrow, cheering you on." Spring had arrived. Birds chirped, flowers bloomed. Everyone had shed their heavy coats, some wore only shirts beneath their school uniforms. Out on the field, the students stood tall and straight. Morning. The first flag was raised, marking the official start of the 100-day pledge assembly. After the flag ceremony came speeches by outstanding teachers, students, and the principal. As the model students, Lin Yinyin and Yingxing were scheduled to speak, but separately. Yingxing was the first to step onto the platform. The moment he appeared, whispers rose from the crowd. Wait, is that Yingxing? In most people's minds, Yingxing was a silent genius. Few had ever heard him speak more than a sentence. And yet, there he was, calm and composed. Oddly enough, though Yingxing usually stammered in everyday conversation, he never did during formal speeches. It was as if he'd been trained for this from a young age. His voice was rich and clear. Standing below the flag platform, Lin Yinyin listened, and a thought crossed her mind. If he's not naturally a stutterer, then what could have happened to make him this way? Whispers continued through the crowd. His voice is so nice. I've hardly ever heard him speak before. Wait, wasn't he the one who stammers? A student from Yingxing's class quickly spoke up. Not at all. He's been tutoring us lately. His voice really is this smooth. Others agreed. Exactly. You don't know him, so don't judge. Yingxing's voice was steady and deep, and for the first time, Lin Yinyin realized just how captivating it truly was. Chapter 33. Absolutely not. Yingxing's speech wasn't over yet, but waves of applause already rolled across the crowd. From the side of the stage, he could clearly hear Lin Yinyin clapping along with everyone else. His heart began to race. He forced himself not to look at her, took a steady breath, closed his eyes, then opened them again and continued speaking with a composed tone. A few minutes later, his speech concluded. It was Lin Yinyin's turn to step on stage. As they passed each other, Lin Yinyin gently squeezed Yingxing's palm. Then she smiled lightly, her eyes curving like crescent moons. Sunlight spilled over them, catching in her lashes. Just as Yingxing froze in place, she took the microphone from his hand and whispered, "Thank you." Because the mic wasn't yet near her lips, only Yingxing could hear that crisp and clear thank you. Lin Yinyin flawlessly recited the prepared speech, word for word. When she set the script down, everyone assumed she would bow and step down, but to their surprise, the microphone stayed at her lips. She continued, her voice bright and confident, "With the college entrance exam just around the corner, the school has been more lenient about our romantic relationships. I bet a lot more couples have formed recently, right? Well, I just want to say, if you have the guts to date, you'd better have the guts to get into the same university. Am I right?" The field immediately erupted into laughter and chatter. Mr. Zhang, standing beside the stage, felt dizzy, nearly fainting on the spot. But Lin Yinyin wasn't done. She added, "Yingxing and I are absolutely going to get into the same university. College is such a fun time, and no one restricts relationships there. So, let's work hard together, full speed ahead." Yingxing, now standing in the exact spot Lin Yinyin had just left, could hear every word she said with perfect clarity. He pressed a hand to his chest, a faint smile forming at the corners of his lips. Yingxing's performance during the pledge assembly was nothing short of outstanding. His voice was calm and charming, his speech fluent, and, on top of it all, he was handsome. Naturally, this combination had an irresistible effect on the girls. Not long after, a few bold ones gathered outside the classroom. One called loudly from the doorway, "Yingxing, are you here?" At the time, Yingxing was watching Lin Yinyin sleep peacefully, her expression soft and sweet. He didn't even blink, wanting to reach out and gently poke her cheek, just like she always did to him. But when he heard someone calling his name, he immediately stood up and glanced around, trying to see who it was. The girl saw him rise and called again, "Yingxing, could you come out for a second?" Two girls stood at the door, both pretty and sweet looking. But to Yingxing, no one compared to Lin Yinyin. He looked at her still sleeping figure, then tiptoed to the door. "Hello," he said softly. The two girls blushed the moment he approached. One of them spoke first. "Yingxing, can we be friends?" She had originally planned to confess to him, but her friend had warned her before they came, Yingxing already had a girlfriend. And not just anyone, she was the famously adored Lin Yinyin. Yingxing replied without hesitation, no. He was no longer stammering as badly as before, but long sentences were still difficult. A short phrase like this, however, he could say clearly. The girl had assumed he'd at least agree to friendship, but his blunt rejection caught her off guard. Chapter 34. A small fever. The girl, refusing to give up, pressed on, "Why not?" But Yingxing didn't answer. He simply turned and walked back to his seat. Fuming, the girl stomped her foot at the classroom door. Her friend, who hadn't spoken until now, tried to comfort her. "Lily, don't be upset. Let's be real. Guys like Yingxing are way out of our league. And besides, he's Lin Yinyin's boyfriend. You really think you can compete with her?" After the mock exam, the seating chart was rearranged. Lin Yinyin and Yingxing remained seatmates, but the students sitting in front of them had changed. Lin Yinyin now sat behind a quiet, soft-spoken girl, while Yingxing's new front desk neighbor was Duanli, a loud, easygoing type. Earlier, Duanli had noticed Yingxing stepping out of the classroom to speak with the two girls. Now curious, he turned around to ask, "Hey, Yingxing, who were those girls just now? Looked like they were trying to confess to you or something." Yingxing simply shook his head, he didn't know them. Duanli remembered Yingxing's usual stammer and decided not to press further, though he couldn't help but remain curious. The bell rang, signaling the start of class. Right on cue, Lin Yinyin sat up from her desk. It was a bright, sunlit morning. After breakfast at home, Lin Yinyin and Yingxing walked to school together. By the second period, Chinese class, Lin Yinyin had begun to feel off. Since waking up that morning, she'd felt dizzy and sluggish, as if her head were filled with fog. She barely had the strength to lift it. By the time the second class began, she could no longer hold herself up. Her arms propped her up just enough to keep her face from slamming into the desk. Yingxing noticed immediately. Panicked, he raised his hand and called out, "Teacher." He was frightened. The teacher looked over and quickly realized something was wrong. She hurried to Lin Yinyin's side and touched her forehead. She had a fever. Looking at Yingxing, the teacher said, "Yingxing, I know you and Lin Yinyin live together. Take her home quickly. Doesn't her family have a private doctor?" Everyone at school knew Lin Yinyin was the heiress of a wealthy family. Compared to the school infirmary, her family doctor was undoubtedly more reliable. And given their relationship, and the fact that Yingxing hadn't been staying in the dorms, it was easy to guess where he'd been living. The teacher knew all of this, though the students clearly didn't. Her words caused a wave of surprised gasps. Yingxing said only, "Okay." He didn't waste a second. He lifted Lin Yinyin onto his back and prepared to leave. Though barely conscious, Lin Yinyin murmured, "Yingxing, don't worry about me. It's just a little fever. Take me home and hurry back to class, all right? Don't make me worry about you. I'll be waiting at home, just fine." Yingxing answered softly, "Okay." Once home, she was taken care of by the family's doctor, who gave her N4. Her fever began to subside. As she slowly regained consciousness, she saw Yingxing sitting at her bedside, his eyes red from worry. In a voice as soft as cotton, she whispered, "Don't worry about me. Go back to class, okay? I'll be here, waiting for you." Yingxing stayed silent for a long moment, then finally said, "All right." He left the bedroom, then stood outside her door for a long while. Eventually, he turned and walked away. He knew he had to go back to school, because sitting here wouldn't help her get better. Chapter 35, Terminal Illness. The handsome family doctor caught the way Lin Yinyin was still gazing toward the doorway and asked with a hint of amusement, "You miss him that much, yet still let him leave?" He had come to understand Lin Yinyin more recently. It was clear to him, she truly adored this boy named Yingxing. Though the doctor himself harbored some affection for her, who wouldn't? With her looks, background, and charming personality, he knew she only had eyes for Yingxing. So, he tucked away his own feelings and devoted himself to being her personal doctor. Hearing his question, Lin Yinyin replied weakly, "Studying is important. The college entrance exam is just around the corner. Besides, I have you here, don't I?" After escorting Lin Yinyin home, Yingxing took the public bus back to school. By the time he returned, the fourth class of the day was already halfway through. Their homeroom teacher was now lecturing. Seeing Yingxing enter and noting the two empty seats, the teacher briefly asked about Lin Yinyin before motioning him to sit. The fourth period passed quickly. Usually, Yingxing and Lin Yinyin would head out together for lunch, but with her absence, he had no appetite. Instead of going to a restaurant, he simply followed the crowd to the school cafeteria. At school, Yingxing only really talked to Lin Yinyin, and occasionally to Duanli. Duanli quickly spotted Yingxing walking alone and even choosing the cafeteria over eating out. Curious, he jogged up beside him and casually slung an arm over his shoulder. "Hey, Yingxing, let's eat together." Yingxing nodded. Okay. Before he started eating with Lin Yinyin, he had always dined alone in the cafeteria. Now, being back here without her, the food tasted like nothing. He couldn't help but feel something was missing. Duanli picked up on the shift in Yingxing's mood. "What's wrong? Missing sister Yinyin already? Can't blame you too, you're practically glued together. When she had a fever earlier, I thought you'd stay home with her." Yingxing didn't respond, but his expression darkened. Realizing he'd said too much, Duanli quietly dropped the subject. During the first hour of evening self-study, which was usually reserved for Lin Yinyin and Yingxing to tutor their classmates, the session was cancelled due to Lin Yinin's absence. The teachers were concerned Yingxing might not manage it alone. Yingxing merely nodded in agreement but remained seated, his eyes unfocused on the textbook before him. What else could he be thinking about but her? He tried to shove her image out of his mind, but couldn't bring himself to do it. With a sigh, he reached for his workbook and attempted to solve some problems, hoping the time would pass faster. He just wanted to go home, to see her. Meanwhile, back at Lin Yinin's room, besides the handsome doctor, the space was filled with 10 overprotective bodyguards and her overly dramatic father. Lin Xiying sat at her bedside, dabbing at invisible tears. "My sweet Yinin, how could this happen to you? It's all my fault. Your father failed you, boo-hoo-hoo." Lin Yinin, for a moment, she truly felt like she was dying of a terminal illness. Chapter 36, Silly Boy. With a helpless sigh, Lin Yinin murmured, "Dad, it's just a low-grade fever." "Didn't the doctor tell you?" The handsome doctor said nothing, but his face twitched slightly. Lin Xiying scratched his head. "He did, but your old man got too worried to hear it properly." Even he knew how feeble that excuse sounded. Exhausted, Lin Yinin lay back against the headboard and shut her eyes, deciding not to humor her ridiculous father any further. Once it was clear she was out of danger, the others quietly left her room. She was just about to drift off when the special care notification sound of QQ chirped, Yingxing. Lin Yinin hurriedly grabbed her phone. "Little cutie, Yinin, has your fever gone down?" "Yinin baby, it has. Don't worry about me." She even sent him a selfie, though her face looked a bit pale. She was clearly doing fine. "Little cutie, Yinin baby, what is it? Little cutie, go to sleep. I'll be home soon." Omega, Yingxing stared at her pale lips in the photo, his brows knitted with concern. He had just finished evening study and was heading to the bus stop, eyes glued to his screen. He didn't notice the group of rough-looking delinquents blocking his path, more than 10 of them. Among them stood the girl who had previously come to his classroom, claiming she wanted to be friends. A voice sounded above his head. "You're Yingxing?" Not much to look at. A burly man with tattoos on both arms sneered as he pulled the girl close. "This is my sister. She wanted to be your friend, but you turned her down?" Yingxing looked up and immediately recognized them. The man had a menacing face, his arms covered in ink. Clearly not someone to mess with. Nervous by nature, Yingxing was even more prone to stutter under pressure, but this time, the fear overwhelmed him completely. He trembled from head to toe, fists clenched, breath shallow. The man grew impatient. "Well, what's with the silence? Boys, give him a good lesson." Night had fallen, and the alleyway was deserted, perfect for trouble. They swarmed him, fists, kicks, one after another. Yingxing had no strength to fight back. He collapsed to the ground, his mouth full of blood, trying to suppress the fire rising in his chest. His school uniform was ripped at the collar, revealing sharp, pale clavicles now bruised and discolored. Motionless, he lay there as they rained blows upon him. Then the girl spoke. "Yingxing, dump Lin Yinin and come with me, and my brothers will stop." She was like a different person now, arrogant, cruel, shameless. When Yingxing didn't answer, the man barked, "What are you waiting for? Hit him harder." The group obeyed. As the beating intensified, Yingxing's breath grew fainter. In the darkness, his eyes flickered. He muttered under his breath, voice low and dangerous, "This silly girl." Chapter 37, Yingxing moved as if he couldn't feel any pain. With nothing but his fists, he knocked every last one of them to the ground. No, this wasn't Yingxing, the timid stuttering boy. This was Yingxing, the other one. He licked the blood from the corner of his lips, the taste sharp and metallic. Smirking, he let out a low, chilling laugh that echoed through the alleyway like a curse. "Hee, you? You dare challenge me?" His eyes were wild. "Come on, hit me." The thugs he had beaten scrambled backward. Just when they tried to stand up again, his voice thundered, and they cowered like dogs. "Why you? Don't come any closer. You're a devil," one man stammered, terror etched into every every line of his face. The girl, the same one who'd earlier confessed, was now kneeling, frozen, too frightened to even move. Yingxing's lips curled in a cold sneer. Hit me? Didn't you want to hit me? What, you scared now? The leader of the group, shaking like a leaf, stammered, and no more, boss. We get it. We'll back off, okay? Just let us go. Yingxing stepped forward, grabbed him by the jaw, forcing his gaze up. You know what you need to do, don't you? I don't know, the man whimpered. Then let me spell it out for you, Yingxing growled. Get out of South City. Take her with you. Vanish. Yes, of course. The man nearly collapsed in gratitude. Thank you, boss. Thank you. Yingxing snorted. TCH. Then he turned and walked away, dragging his bruised, battered body toward the Lin residence. He was Yingxing. He had awakened when Yingxing was just 8 years old, 3rd grade. He wasn't quite sure how he had been born into his brother's body, but from the very first moment he opened his eyes, all he saw was a boy lying broken and bloodied on the ground. That image had never left him. Yingxing knew everything about his brother. He shared his body. He watched his life unfold through a one-way mirror, but Yingxing didn't know he existed. That was the cruelest part of it all. For 9 years, Yingxing had lived in the shadows of his brother's soul. He rarely surfaced. This was only the second time he'd taken full control. And all because he existed for one reason only, to protect his brother. And yet, he couldn't help it. He was jealous. Why did the sweet, naive boy, this stuttering fool, get to fall in love? Why did Yingxing, who had never spoken a full sentence without stammering, win the heart of someone as dazzling as Lin Yinyin? Yingxing's chest was tight with anticipation. On his way home, he kept rehearsing what to say. What would he do when he saw her? How would he explain the bruises? And how should he introduce himself? But none of that mattered, because he didn't want to break the illusion. He was going to pretend to be Yingxing. He slipped into the house through the back door. Though everything was familiar to him, this was the first time he had touched anything. He cleaned himself up, took a shower, sewed up the torn uniform with neat, practiced hands, washed it and hung it to dry. The wounds on his face were minimal. His hands had shielded it. Only his swollen lip gave him away. He disinfected and dressed his wounds, then put on the clean, damp uniform and quietly left his room. Circling around from the back entrance to the front, he knocked on Lin Yinin's door. Inside, the girl stirred. Come in, she called, her voice still soft from sleep. Yingxing entered and sat beside her bed. She blinked, eyes adjusting to the light, and smiled as she saw him. Chapter 38. Yingxing wakes up. There was a faint tremor in his voice. Yinin. She looked up and noticed the bruise on his lip. Yingxing, what happened to your mouth? She asked, concern filling her eyes. She sat up and gently touched the injured corner of his lips. Hiss. It hurts. Yingxing winced and forced a laugh. I bumped into the desk by accident. It's nothing. Lin Yinin didn't believe him. She picked up her phone and called the family doctor. Doctor, Yingxing's hurt. Can you come up to my room? Bring the medical kit. The handsome family doctor arrived within 5 minutes, carrying a massive first aid box. When he saw the swollen lip, he paused. Did the fever come with that much passion? His expression was indescribable, slightly disappointed, even. He wanted someone to kiss him that hard too. After he treated the wound, he left the room with a small sigh of envy. Yingxing now sat quietly beside Lin Yinin's bed. He didn't know what to say. The warmth in her voice, the tenderness in her eyes, it overwhelmed him. Suddenly, Lin Yinin gasped in delight. You said a full sentence. Yingxing's heart stuttered. I didn't, he stammered, voice flustered. He didn't want to be discovered. He just wanted to protect her, quietly, silently. That was enough. Lin Yinin looked a little disappointed but didn't press. She simply smiled and lay back down. She thought he would leave, but he didn't. He stayed, just sat there, watching her with a soft, gentle gaze. Lin Yinin felt like something was off. This Yingxing seemed different, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. Eventually, sleep pulled her back under. Only then did Yingxing quietly leave. He didn't return to the bedroom. Instead, he went back to the alley, back to the crime scene. He couldn't let Lin Yinin see it, couldn't let her suspect a thing. So he scrubbed every bloodstain, picked up every shred of fabric. By the time he was done, it looked like nothing had ever happened. Because this path, this alley, was one she often walked with Yingxing. He couldn't let her worry. He couldn't let her know he existed. Even if he was strong, even if he could fight, even if he was cruel when he needed to be, he was still just 9 years old. But for his brother, he would do anything. He would give up everything. And perhaps, someday, things would change. But not now. Now, he just needed to disappear. He returned to the Lin house and lay down in that familiar yet unfamiliar bed. And for the first time, he slept deeply. At 6 a.m., Yingxing woke up. He had no memory of the night before, but his body hurt, and so, his brain made up a false memory to explain it. Chapter 39. Known to all, in his memory, he had simply returned home by bus after evening study, gone to Lin Yinin's room to keep her company until she fell asleep, and then returned to his own room for the night. Yingxing woke up. After washing up, he went downstairs for breakfast. Lin Yinin was already seated at the table, waving him over. He obediently sat down beside her. In a soft, childlike voice, he said, "Morning, Yinin." Though Yingxing still couldn't form complete sentences fluently, he was now able to utter short phrases with ease. Lin Yinin reached over to pat his head affectionately. Her fever had fully subsided. Hand in hand, they headed off to school together. Lin Yinin's return brought joy not only to Yingxing, but to the entire class. Everyone had missed the dual evening study sessions she and Yingxing used to lead. Thanks to their tutoring, the whole class's performance had improved significantly in the second mock exam. Upon hearing the results, Duanli was arguably the most excited. His scores had improved by over 100 points. While his total was just over 500, it was more than enough to get a decent university placement for a student in the athletic track. Overjoyed, Duanli lunged to give Lin Yinin a hug. But before he could reach her, an arm suddenly came between them. His rightful hug was intercepted by Yingxing. With a rare seriousness on his face, Yingxing pressed Lin Yinin's head down into his shoulder, her cheek resting bruising on his left shoulder blade. Confused, Lin Yinyin looked up. Yingxing, what are you doing? What's wrong? She was puzzled by his sudden behavior and sought an explanation. Yingxing's expression remained unchanged as he continued to hold her close. Though he spoke to Lin Yinyin, his eyes were fixed on Duanli. No, don't like. Lin Yinyin was even more confused now. Don't like what? She stared at him, trying to deduce what he meant. Yingxing's eyes dropped to her lips, pink and slightly parted. You, mine. Though the words were few, Lin Yinyin pieced it together. Yingxing didn't like anyone else touching her, because she belonged to him. Her heart fluttered at the realization. To think she mattered to him this much, it filled her with quiet joy. Duanli stood frozen. I might be the extra here. He turned and quietly returned to his seat, deciding he didn't need to witness any more public displays of affection. Yingxing was reluctant to let go of Lin Yinin's warm embrace, but the school bell rang, forcing him to release her. The next class was Chinese. Lin Yinin tried to stay alert, but perhaps due to lingering fatigue from her fever, she found herself nodding off again. Her head slowly tilted and came to rest gently on Yingxing's arm. Yingxing noticed her dozing immediately, tensing up as if he were made of stone. He didn't move, afraid he might disturb her. The teacher noticed too, of course, but chose to turn a blind eye. After all, some things were best left unnoticed. Like now. The Chinese teacher glanced briefly at the sweet, sleepy pair, then turned to face the other side of the room and continued the lesson. Just muttering inwardly, these two, their relationship might as well be public knowledge already. Not just among students, the teachers knew too. Chapter 40, King's Game. Even some teachers who didn't teach the senior year were well aware. Time passed in a blink. The third mock exam came and went. Honestly, to Lin Yinin, the first, second, and third mock exams felt like one never-ending stretch. No sooner did one finish than another began. Her life was an endless cycle of exams. Somehow, it was already May. She could have sworn New Year's Day was just yesterday. Time didn't merely pass, it devoured. But after the third mock exam, the atmosphere in the classroom was surprisingly cheerful. The reason was obvious. Under Lin Yinin and Yingxing's leadership, the whole class had improved. To them, the third mock was just another step closer. Now, with the college entrance exam barely a month away, it was truly just around the corner. The homeroom teacher stood at the front, giving a summary speech. Naturally, she highlighted Lin Yinin and Yingxing's contributions. But what were the two model students doing? Passing notes. Yinin, did you come into my room last night? Yingxing, no. Yinin, I wasn't asleep. You touched my face, and my lips. Yingxing paused, hand hovering over the page. Then wrote, you're mine. I'll touch you if I want to. Lin Yinin was stunned by his boldness. She looked up at him. He didn't even blush, just wrote the words with a straight face. She smiled teasingly. Yingxing tried to glare at her, but his glare had all the force of a puff of wind. When it came to Lin Yinin, unless it was in bed, he never needed force. To her, his feeble attempt at intimidation was nothing but pure seduction. Lin Yinin scribbled, don't seduce me. Before Yingxing could grab the note, she added another line, come to my room tonight. Yingxing, she leaned in, whispering against his ear, sweetheart Yingxing baby, come to my room. Yingxing felt his ears burning red, the tips practically glowing. His heart was pounding like a drum, breath quickening, eyes darting away as he whispered back, I'll take that seriously. Lin Yinin replied softly, you're allowed to. That night, of course, nothing too intense happened. With exams so close, Lin Yinin only wanted to flirt, not go all the way. This Saturday was her 18th birthday. She invited everyone in the class to the party. What Yingxing didn't know was that her birthday would bring him a huge surprise. She had handed out the invitations as early as Thursday. And soon, it was the big day. The classmates arrived, presented their gifts, and broke into small groups to play card games, truth or dare, and of course, the classic King's Game. Naturally, Lin Yinin and Yingxing were in. They were grouped with Duanli, 3 other boys, and 2 girls, 8 players total. For the King's Game, there were 7 numbered cards and 1 king card. Lin Yinin sat between Duanli and Yingxing. The first king was Duanli. Sharp-eyed, he saw that Lin Yinin held the number 3. Duanli's eyes sparkled with mischief. Rubbing his hands together, he cleared his throat and declared, number 3 and the person to her right must kiss for 30 seconds. And not just any kiss, a French kiss. Chapter 41, I love you. Silently, Duanli apologized to Lin Yinin in his heart. Everyone had heard the challenge Duanli posed as the king in the game and began to cheer and tease. Who's number 3? What if it's 2 boys, or 2 girls? That'd be even more fun. Lin Yinin, hearing the chatter around her, raised her hand. I'm number 3. All eyes immediately turned to Yingxing, who was sitting beside her. Kiss, 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 go, Yinin. 30 seconds, pin him down and claim your prize. The corner was dimly lit, and no one noticed the deep crimson on Yingxing's cheeks. Lin Yinin gently poked his chest with her finger and asked, can I kiss you? She thought she was being very gentlemanly, not realizing that her question only made Yingxing blush harder. He nodded slightly and whispered a quiet mem, but everyone heard it loud and clear. Whoa! Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. She kissed him. Lin Yinin took the initiative, storming his defenses and conquering his heart. Yingxing, cornered and breathless, could only surrender and respond. 30 seconds passed, and Lin Yinin still felt unsatisfied. The second round of the King's Game began. This time, the king was the girl sitting to Yingxing's right. She glanced at Yingxing's card, then exchanged a secret look with Duanli. She announced, number 5 must confess their love to number 8 with a heartfelt declaration of at least 50 words. More shrieks followed. Who are 5 and 8? What if it's 2 guys again, or 2 girls? Lin Yinin, holding the 8 card, suddenly found the prompt strangely familiar. Yingxing leaned over and whispered, are you number 8? His speech had improved recently, perhaps thanks to tutoring classmates during evening study, or perhaps someone else had helped bear his burden. But whenever Yingxing got nervous, his words still faltered. Lin Yinin raised an eyebrow. You're number 5, she wasn't asking. She was stating. By now, the crowd had already guessed who 5 and 8 were. Yingxing and Lin Yinin were pushed to the center of the circle. Yingxing clutched Lin Yinin's hands tightly. He took a deep breath and declared, Lin Yinin, I love you. I don't know how to say sweet things or romantic lines, but I do know that meeting you is is the greatest honor of my life. If I could, I'd want to be with you forever. And if I can't, then I'll guard you from afar, forever. I always wonder, why do you like me? What is it about me that makes your heart beat faster? I want to know. Because once I do, I'll make that part of me shine even brighter, just for you, so you'll never stop liking me. Since I met you, my life has been full of light. Yinyin, I'm begging you, please love me. Always. Lin Yinyin was stunned into silence. She had never expected Yingxing to express himself like this. Overwhelmed with emotion, she threw her arms around his neck and kissed him fiercely on the cheek. Yingxing, I love you too. I really, really love you, not just a part of you, but every bit, everything that makes you you. Chapter 42, Engagement. It was the first time Lin Yinyin had ever voiced her feelings so openly in front of so many people. Even she wasn't quite sure why she loved Yingxing so deeply. At first, it had just been curiosity, but now, she was completely, hopelessly in love. She didn't just want to be with Yingxing, she wanted forever. Amid the cheers and laughter, the two blushing lovers returned to their seats, and the game continued. After 2 hours of fun, it was already 3 p.m., time to prepare for the birthday feast. But Lin Yinyin had one more announcement to make. She stood on stage with her father Lin Xiying and Yingxing by her side. Holding the microphone briefly, she then handed it to her father. Lin Xiying took it with a knowing smile, his voice soon echoing through the venue. Today is my beloved daughter Lin Yinyin's 18th birthday. Thank you all for being here to celebrate with her. But aside from the birthday festivities, I have a small announcement, something my daughter specifically requested me to share. He paused for effect, then continued, standing beside me is Yingxing, the son of an old friend. When the children were very young, our families arranged a betrothal between them. So, today, on my daughter's birthday, I would like to formally announce their engagement. I know many of you here are their classmates. I hope you'll join me in witnessing their love story. And of course, one day, I hope to see you all again at their wedding. This had been planned for a long time, by Lin Yinyin and her father. Yingxing had known nothing. They had kept it secret just to surprise him on this special day. Yingxing stood beside them, feeling his heart thundering in his chest. It was as if fireworks were exploding in his mind. He was so happy he couldn't describe it. His face was flushed all over. Then Lin Xiying handed the microphone to Yingxing, clearly curious to hear what the boy had to say. Yingxing took the mic, inhaled deeply a few times, and began, Yinyin, I'm so grateful you appeared in my life. Today is your birthday, and I did prepare a gift for you. It's probably buried somewhere under all the other presents at home, but the gift I truly want to give you is this, my whole heart, full of love and sincerity. You might not be able to see it, but in the days ahead, you'll feel it in every change I make. I will become the best partner I can be. Please trust me, your future with me will be filled with joy. Lin Yinyin was still trying to process how fluently Yingxing could now speak. It felt like a dream. Her once shy, stammering boy had suddenly become so confident and eloquent. The audience burst into applause. The loudest, of course, came from their classmates, who had witnessed their entire journey, from desk partners to lovers, and now, engaged. The birthday celebration lasted until 9 p.m. Because of the engagement announcement, the couple spent the evening hand in hand, making toasts and receiving blessings, side by side.